Democrat Josh Shapiro spent $840,000 on this ad for far-right Republican candidate Doug Mastriano.
He wants to end vote by mail, and he led the fight to audit the 2020 election.
In June, the Democratic Colorado PAC funded this ad for far-right candidate Ron Hanks. And you better believe that back in May, the Democratic Governors Association ran this ad for the far-right Republican Darren Bailey. Before I explain what's going on, look at this ad. This one was funded by a Nancy Pelosi PAC in California. Try to remember that while you're watching it, because this is what these ads look like in practice.
Same label, so Republicans gotta check the ingredients. David Valadao claims he's Republican. Yet, David Valadao voted to impeach President Trump. Yeah, Valadao voted to impeach Trump. And Republican Chris Matisse, a true conservative, 100% pro-Trump and proud. Pro-Trump Republican Chris Matisse, military veteran, local businessman. Or politician David Valadao who voted to impeach Trump. Republicans, it's time to decide. House Majority PAC is responsible for the content of this ad.
All these ads are essentially the same. They're all targeted at a conservative audience, and they all paint the candidates in the same way, as the most conservative candidate that's closest to Trump. In other words, as the Republican voter's best choice. What the f is going on? In simple terms, the Democratic Party is literally funding far-right politicians. Not just the opposition, not just any Republican, but the extreme wing of the GOP. If you're new here, allow me to be the first to welcome you to the shining city on a hill and beacon of democracy that is the US. Don't mind the fire. These ads are really, really weird. Not just because one party is funding another, that's already insane. It's the specific kinds of candidates being funded. The kind of candidates Democrats say they hate. If you've been following them for a while, you might remember this clip of Joe Biden talking about how America needed a strong and principled Republican Party.
We need a Republican Party. We need an opposition that's principled and strong.
And it's not just Joe. Nancy Pelosi said the same thing about needing a strong Republican Party earlier this year. She told the press that she was really bummed about the GOP being, quote, hijacked by extremists. But less than 4 months later, she was the one paying for the hijackers' plane tickets. At first, this might look like hypocrisy. Democrats say they want a moderate opposition, but they fund the far right. They say one thing, do another, we, the public, catch them in a lie, and bim bam boom, democracy is saved and we can all go home. But that's actually not what's happening. There is nothing hypocritical about Democrats saying they want a moderate opposition and then funding a far-right challenger. That's because these are actually two sides of the same political strategy coin. A strategy that, as we'll see, not only reveals the class interest of the Democratic Party, but shows us one of the mechanical ways our capitalist society is decaying into fascism. If that sounds dramatic, just wait. I promise you it's not. But let's go from the beginning, and start by explaining why Democrats are funding these candidates in the first place. The first thing to know is that midterms are coming up and the Democrats are terrified. Biden's numbers are in the trash, and all reliable, funding a war in a foreign country isn't working quite as well as it usually does. There is little hope that Democrats will get a majority again, so they need a way to tilt the odds in their favor, and they've figured out how. Democrats are hoping that by making a bunch of far-right nutjobs win GOP primaries, two things will happen in general elections. One, moderate Republicans will be outraged and vote for a more centrist blue candidate, and two, solidly left-wing voters will also be outraged and vote for the lesser of two evils out of necessity. And the problem is that this strategy has worked for them before. In 2012, another Democrat, Claire McCaskill, spent $1.7 million on ads for the ultra-conservative Todd Akin, more than Akin spent himself. The result? Akin got a boost in the polls as soon as the ads started running, won the GOP primary, and then lost against McCaskill in the general election. This wasn't an accident, and it wasn't even a secret. McCaskill herself said, "There were 3 viable candidates, and Todd Akin was kind of the weirdest one. I knew he might say some weird things if he were nominated. And he had less money, so we took a poll and figured out what Republican voters would really like about him." She even went on to write this article about it. Democrats fund these campaigns because they win when their opposition are far-right weirdos. Except when they don't. Funding a far-right candidate and saying they want a moderate opposition are two ways for the Democrats to do the same thing, to position the Democratic Party as the only reasonable political choice. By saying that the Republicans are being hijacked by extremists and then actively funding that hijacking, the Democrats are creating an image of themselves as the only remaining bastion of democracy, the only way to vote that won't actively tear the country down. At least until the Republicans go quote-unquote back to normal, which Democrats know will never happen. Democrats are reliant on the right being represented by the worst guy imaginable, and will actively work to make that the case. Either, as we see here, with direct funding, or more commonly, by pitting themselves only against candidates like Trump. Clinton never campaigned against guys like Jeb Bush. Her opponent was only whoever was the farthest to the right and could make her supporters most upset. She drummed up a radical opposition because it's a much safer strategy than running against someone who shared a lot of her ideas. But this strategy has a couple different outcomes. It might, as Democrats hope, bring some moderate Republicans to their side and get more blue voters out to the polls. Maybe. But it might completely backfire and their funding will just have gotten more far-right wackos into politics. No one can know for sure what's going to happen come election time. What is guaranteed, though, is that this lesser of two evil strategy allows the Democrats to move further right and still get votes from left-wing voters. And it actively promotes fascism. More ad spots featuring quasi-fascist politicians, brandishing fascist slogans, and actively supporting the president who, so far, has embodied fascism the most, all promote the popularity of fascism in the US. That is undeniable. At the end of the day, fascism is getting more airtime, convincing more conservatives, and the Democrats are absolutely to blame. With not the best odds of winning, and with the knowledge that this strategy promotes ultra-conservative politics in America, why would the Democrats run these ads? After all, Democrats aren't fascists, they're liberals. There is a difference. Why are they going with a risky strategy that, even in its best case scenario, actively makes society worse? There are two explanations. One, mechanical, at the party level. This strategy is a direct product of the way the Democratic Party is organized. Another, at the societal level. This strategy is the product of how our entire economy is organized. Let's start with that second one. You may have heard the phrase, fascism is capitalism in decay. That sentence is used to say that as capitalism starts failing the people it usually benefits, starts decaying, it concedes strategic ground to fascism in order to survive. It's an idea that gained traction in the 20th century when socialists realized that capitalism wasn't being replaced by socialism like they expected. World War I and the Great Depression, brought on by a global economic crash, didn't lead to socialism replacing capitalism's global hegemony. Instead, reactionary movements started popping up everywhere, most notably in Germany and Italy. Capitalism hadn't been replaced by socialism, it had adapted into something new, fascism. A political economic system that didn't look like capitalism, and that often even gave up on, quote, free markets, but that preserved the private ownership and profits of the capitalist class. The same people were on top, but things looked a little different. Here's how socialists explain something like this happening. As capital concentrates into fewer and more powerful monopolies, as the rate of profit falls, as more and more people are kicked into poverty and those remaining in the workforce are increasingly overworked, the conditions that produce fascism begin to appear. Monopoly capitalism, the inevitable outcome of winner-take-all competition, leads to economic stagnation and crashes. The first victims of this stagnation and these crashes are, of course, the working class, as we saw in the Great Depression, 2008, and with the COVID recession. Millions of people are suddenly thrust into poverty and can't make ends meet. The thing is that within this context, governments are no longer able to rule as they usually do. They have to resort to more direct violence to keep their hold on power. People's demands are no longer brushed away by politicians in assemblies. They're actively resisted with cops on the street. For example, when people start demanding to defund the police or for a price freeze on basic necessities. Political stagnation is just no longer an option for capitalist governments now that tens of millions of people's immediate needs aren't being met. So to preserve that political gridlock that is so stable and profitable, governments get used to scaling up the violence. But when people need to vote you in to govern, governments need to find a justification for this sudden growth in state violence. And this is where fascism comes in. Fascists usually explain the decay of capitalism not by the inherent flaws of the system, but by its corruption by a small minority. A minority usually separated out from the rest of society along arbitrary lines, like race, ethnicity, or place of birth. Fascists assert that it is these minorities, not the natural tendency for wealth to accumulate into fewer hands under capitalism, that has pushed the masses into misery, and therefore that state violence is legitimate in order to punish those minorities and anyone who defends them or advocates for systemic change. After all, the system is perfect. It's those people that are the problem. Fascists explain away the failure of the system and its sudden uptick in violence with scapegoating. It's as simple as that. Because this kind of narrative is beneficial to established capitalist governments, this struggle for power gets mirrored at the national level. Governments that benefit from capitalism would rather concede to fascism and keep their benefits, rather than allow for socialism to grow in popularity and upset their power and private interests. This theory of fascism is how socialists explain the 20th century. But practically speaking, how does this concession to fascism actually happen? What exactly is it that has to take place for fascism to gain this kind of place in society and government? This is where the Democratic Party comes in. You probably know that another idea, socialism, has gained traction these past few years. Around 70% of millennials and Gen Z say they are somewhat or extremely likely to vote for a socialist. And nearly a quarter of them believe society would be better if all private property was abolished. Faced with this demographic information, the Democrats have two choices. Either they adopt socialist policies, or they win elections. The thing is, they can't do both, not at a party-wide level. That's because the Democrats aren't just contending with the public's pressure when they run for office. While the public may want socialism, more than ever before, not every Democrat can adopt socialist rhetoric and policies into their program. That's because at the core of every Democrat's strategy is the question of how do you get funding? Average people don't contribute that much to political campaigns. And very wealthy people will not fund a party with policies that threaten their profits. They just won't. Not if that threat starts becoming real. A few socialists in the party is okay, but a party that embraces socialism can't afford to run nearly as many ads. That means that Democrats who support socialist policies will have to fight an upstream battle. They'll need to fundraise at a much more grassroots level. They'll have to contend with constant villainization in media institutions owned and operated by some of the wealthiest people on Earth. And they will constantly deal with the pressure of simply existing within a party that is not hospitable to socialist ideas. That doesn't necessarily mean they can't succeed, it just means it's the hardest path to success. With these kinds of challenges, many more Democrats will take the easy win of running against a far-right opponent to try to capture centrist voters. Fascism grows just because it's easier. This kind of system doesn't need anyone to be evil. It doesn't need anyone to lie, nobody needs to be actively dishonest. Enough people just need to follow the path of least resistance. It is in the material interest of Democrats to not concede any more ground to socialism than is absolutely necessary for their survival. And by comparison, it's much easier to fund and then run against the far right. The more their platform is influenced by the anti-capitalist left, the more likely they are to lose elections. So without trying to make fascism more popular, just by being okay with it happening to win elections, fascism gains traction in our society. This is not the only way fascism takes over, but man is it an effective one. That is why I constantly talk about alternative networks of power on this channel. Why I focus so much on the institutions of our government and how they're constructed. Why I keep telling you to organize, unionize, participate in mutual aid, and study up and disseminate information on alternatives to the capitalist economic model. The natural tendency of our elected institutions and political parties is to prioritize capitalism, even when it fails most people and starts relying on fascism to survive. Our institutions were built with preserving capitalism in mind, not to be accurate reflections of the public's will, especially when the—
This is Republican State Senator Doug Mastriano.
With Tomination Politics. I did a live stream yesterday. Check out www.tominationpolitics.com to check that out. Had some interesting fun. I drank a lot of Redemption Rye bourbon, and I went off on a lot of tangents about just the ridiculousness of what we call democracy. There wasn't many election results in as I go to the results today. And by the way, guys, I never finished this. This is like an addiction. It's politics. Is it better than drugs? I'm not sure, but it's very time-consuming and tedious, just like drugs. We've got 85% of the electorate reporting up, apparently, as far as congressional results go. As far as gubernatorial results, we've got 90%. just the ones that I want to know that none of the mainstream media people have called. And it's probably because, I don't know, it's a deadlocked race with Carrie Lake in Arizona. The race, Raphael Warnock, senator, too close to call, with Herschel Walker saying, Ricky Bobby, I didn't come to lose. Oh, you're going to endear your conservative base with the Ricky Bobby trope, aren't you? Little baby Jesus. I have to hand it to these black conservatives. They know what they know what white conservatives like. They know they like NASCAR beer and, Jesus wrapped in a flag and shit. None of that's really interesting to me, and neither is this election, guys. But I do want to deliver this free-thinking, innovative, and open-minded political take on what's happening in our country. So even if I don't really care about that, I care about you. I care about you guys, not me, us. So if you guys care about this, then I guess I have to. But just letting you know, we're doing it to ourselves. As far as their election results are concerned, though, what we've done. And Carrie Lake is exploding after seeing, her not winning by a landslide. Because she said that she was going to win by a landslide. Why did she say that she was going to win by a landslide? Trump said he was going to win by a landslide. Now she probably might have something in common with Trump. She could actually be losing. And just like Trump, she's raising unfounded doubts about election results in Arizona. Although the media hasn't, it's too close to call, and they're not going to call it for, the reason that they don't want to be, I guess, wrong for the 100th time. That's really the race that I wanted to see. I wanted to see if a female impersonator of Trump could win an election. That might actually give me some perspective to the thoughts and feelings of the American people. Let's talk about the face of the electorate. Well, the face of the electorate, guys, is split in deadlock, and the current Senate seats are 46 Democrats and 47 Republicans. Yes, 46 Democrats, 47 Republicans. As of now, with 85% of the progress reporting, 5 races still left to call. It appears that the Republicans are up in the Senate. The Republicans are up in the House of Representatives as well. Let's go to the House results. 172 Democrats, 199 Republicans. All right, so there's still more houses to be counted as well. There's about 64 seats left in the House of Representatives. But the Republicans did make gains. And at this moment, usually Republicans, they linger from behind and then they make that cut up if they're going to win. But they had an early lead, and they maintained their lead in the House of Representatives for all night, and now within the morning. In the morning also, guys, we've had some commentary, or people trying to get commentary from Nancy Pelosi. I don't know what's going on with Nancy Pelosi, but she doesn't want to talk for some reason about these gains by Republicans in the House of Representatives. If I was Nancy, I would just be like, at least they're not talking about my husband. She doesn't want to talk about this yet. She probably won't talk about it until she has to give up that gavel, give up her speakership. If she loses the House of Representatives, she's of course no longer a speaker, no longer third in line to the powerful seat of the Oval Office. She drifts from relevance and power. Now, of course, she has once drifted back and forth during the George W. Bush years. She could get it again, but she's old now. She's almost like 97, so I don't know if she's that old, but she looks like it. Now, of course, the gubernatorial races, like I said, in the battleground states, a lot of them are too close to call. One I'm glad to call, I'm proud to call, not because I like Governor Abbott, but he's my governor. This is Texas, and I am proud of the great state of Texas. Don't mess with Texas, guys. I'm very interested and pleased to see that nobody fell for Better or Worse line of "you're not doing anything." It wasn't just me that wondered, what would you do better? We haven't seen anything from you, not even a proposal. All we've seen from you is a rap sheet, a whole bunch of fucking videos from TikTok, and campaign finance contributions from the military-industrial complex. So, to see these mealy-mouthed, lying, double-faced Democrats get what they deserve, it kind of brings just like a joy to me, guys. Even though Republicans suck, they're scum, of course. But so when two-faced motherfucking fake-ass bitches get what they deserve, and everybody sees through their shit, I just think that's fucking cool. Beto O'Rourke lost to Governor Abbott even worse than he lost last time. In fact, even if the Libertarian candidate bowed out, what's his name, Trippett or something, he had 1% of the vote, he still would have been a spoiler. They couldn't even call him a spoiler because Beto O'Rourke lost by like 12 points. So all those fundraising dollars, all those times at the phone canvassing your communities, volunteers, how was that? Was that benefiting you? And by the way, how would Beto benefit you even if he did win? He wouldn't. Maybe pay you, put you in his cabinet or his position. You say, oh yeah, he should work with me on the campaign. He's got a job. Maybe he get you a job. You got nothing now, guys. You literally lost by 12 points. You're embarrassing things. You made Texas go back as far as turning the state purple, which I don't really give a shit about. The one thing about us in Texas is that we don't give a shit about either party, really. Everybody says it. We all know it. There's only one thing that matters in Texas, guys, and it's integrity. I'm tired. I said that I wasn't gonna fucking deal with this anymore. I was gonna go to bed. But the Republicans made gains in the House, and then I wanted to see what Nancy Pelosi was gonna say. I wanted to see what Carrie Lake was gonna say. She didn't disappoint. She came in Trump, she's going out Trump. I can't wait, bro. I'm gonna pop some popcorn when she fucking gives a press conference, says she's not gonna concede. So, like I said, the House is leaning Republican, according to the projections. And this is by CBS, BBC, which is the partner, it's an advertising partner in the United States. But still not United States media. So maybe more unbiased. I mean, the Democrats are trying to hold on to control the power of the Senate and the Chamber of Congress, and they've got their media working overtime to manufacture all kinds of reasons why this election is not going to last a day. It's going to last at least a month, or maybe 2 years, who knows, as elections usually do. But John Fetterman, guys, beat Dr. Oz. What's his name? Mammoth Oz. And there was no red wave. DeSantis won. He was reelected. Whitmer won. She was reelected. Abbott won. He was reelected. The only people that are, I mean, it really just did really come down to the battleground states, guys. Pennsylvania, Arizona, Nevada. Not really Florida anymore. But those three, I'd say, those were really the deciding factor that would determine the shifts of power in the halls of Congress and the Capitol Hill buildings. With these mainstream media, conglomerates not calling the races, I of course don't want to call the races. I see the percentages, and I know there's reporting still left. And I'm pretty sure, though, the oligarchs have already decided who's going to win the election. They funded both sides this year, filled them full of dark money, super PACs, campaign finance contributions directly, the maximum amounts, of course, the coaching amounts, of course. And these races have already been decided, really. I think the reason we're holding off on calling them personally is the media has to manufacture the official narrative the country is going to be feeling, because everybody thought there was going to be a red wave. They'd said there was going to be a red wave, and then mild gains in the Senate, perhaps mild gains in the House of Representatives, perhaps enough to cost Nancy the speakership, not enough to cause a red wave. So at every turn in perspective, the mainstream media has been completely off, and their predictions have been ridiculous. So, as much as these polls have been polling these candidates well, it's all coming out, guys. Their exit polls were bullshit, yes, bro. It turns out there were no weapons of mass destruction. I don't even know why we listen to these guys anymore. But I have to, do I need to call an election? I'm not a journalist. I will outwardly tell you that. I do political commentary and I sing songs, guys. So I'm not out on the front lines looking at the ballots myself. So here it is from CBS, CNN. They all agree there's 85% of the congressional results in. As far as they're concerned, the Republicans have won the House of Representatives. Nancy Pelosi, just babe, at least they're not going to talk about your husband or a hammer or insider trading. It should be a lucky day for you. Oh, but what about that fucking video of your husband and him crashing the Porsche, drunk driving? Are we going to finally see that he was doing some fucking cocaine with that? Probably. And probably that hammer guy was probably Paul Pelosi's dealer. This is my speculation. These guys, they're so stupid. They try to short their dealers and all the time. Oh yeah. I bet Hunter Biden did the same thing. We have no idea why that hammer came out, bro. But I bet it was because the guy gave you an ounce and you didn't give him $800. I bet that's why, Paul. Anyway, I bet that's why you answered the door too, when the police docked. But anyway, Nancy, they're not going to be talking about that anymore. They're not going to be talking about your crack dealers, your large titties in Taiwan, or your massive insider trading. So take a break, recoup, sweep some torture memos under the rug like you did in the 90s, and have a Cosmo. Control of the Congress remains at stake, guys. So far. So Indie Left News says he's 83. I guess. They both look like they're about to, crack the bucket, bro. In fact, literally, these guys. How many terms? Is that stress or is that war crimes on their face? I can't tell. But we've still got some interesting, foreign policy and stuff going into effect. He's doing some kind of. We'll see how it happens when the Republicans, because now they're gonna. If the Republicans get this, Indy, thank you, Indy, for causing these conversations. So if they get, investigations are coming out, right? There's going to be investigations on their asses. They're going to get the video of his drunk driving record. Who knows what it was? We'll never know, because they're liars. It could have been sex and drugs. You never heard of sex and drugs before? They go very well together. They pair very well together on the nose. McCarthy's victory party fizzles, though. And the race for the Senate is still at hand. Herschel Walker didn't come to lose, baby Jesus. We'll see what happens with Herschel Walker. We'll see what happens with Carrie Lake. We'll see what happens with anybody else that I really give a shit about. Eddie, left. Anything you want to add to this before I close out, bro? It seems like all of the politicians that got campaign finance contributions from both sides of the parties, both sides of the spectrum, they won their races. Battleground states are still close to call. And we're all experiencing neoliberalism. So, yeah, guys. Is it time now to ask the Republicans what exactly their vision is for the country? Yeah. Like Eddie Lefty says, we're fucked no matter what. Isn't it funny that we're fucked no matter what, and yet the Democrats still can't even get enough strength to muster up a, hey, Republicans, so what do you plan on doing if you get power? I bet they don't even know. Republicans. They're just so busy talking about woke trans people and how they should be America first and pull up their bootstraps so they can close the borders, bring law and order, and a whole bunch of respect back to your elders. It's all just fucking bullshit. I don't know how the conservatives buy it. It's so annoying, but whatever. Anyway, I'm getting off. I rambled. Andy left. It was good to talk to you, bro. We're fucked no matter what. But at least Beto O'Rourke lost. Stacey Abrams lost. And maybe they can move on from politics onto shows at MSNBC right after Joy Ann Reid. some ideas, guys.
And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen.
Electorate thing.
Be responsible.
Try being one of those guys. Hi guys, this is Tommy with Tommy Nation Politics.
And don't forget to think responsibly.